Chapter 6, the 11th Commandment. But we beseech ye, brethren, that you study to be quiet and to do your own business. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? St. Luke 2:49. Beware of fear that spreadeth like the black and soundless wings of midnight bat, between the moonlight of thy soul and thy great goal that loometh in the distance far away. The Voice of the Silence, Blavatsky. In the life of every earnest seeker after truth, after the first enthusiasm of the awakening to his spiritual possibilities and the wonder of his newly found joy, there comes a period of depression in which everything seems to fail him, and a shadow of discouragement, almost lack of faith, seems to spread over him. In his mind, questions arise, at first fleeting, then growing more persistent. After all, is this great change that has come into my life worth the effort I have made to give up my old ideals and conditions and remodel my life? Are these new ideas practical, or are they mere ephemeral sophistries which fail me in my hour of need? And the teachers to whom I have listened, are they not human beings full of frailties like myself, with no higher wisdom for my guidance, with nothing to give me that I am not already of myself? A great fear possesses him, lest conditions beat him back and compel him to resume the old treadmill of his former life, without hope and without being able to contact the spiritual power that sustained him at first. All his beautiful soul experiences, looked at from this slough despond, now seem to have been but fantastic imaginings, and the cry goes forth. What is the use of all this struggling? At this point, unless some understanding of the law is grasped, the seeker is apt to slip back, apt to repudiate all the good resolutions and vows he has made to his higher self. And like the man from out whom the unclean spirit was cast, he then takes unto himself 7 other unclean spirits of worry, doubt, fear, and discouragement, and his last state is worse than the first. If, however, it is pointed out to him at this time that this depression is but a natural phenomena, through some phase of which most seekers pass, and which is just as natural as a night of darkness after a day of sunshine, he will be able to take advantage of this night period of the soul to strengthen his courage and faith. If he turns to the Bible for comfort, he will find it the 23rd Psalm. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The period of depression is indeed the valley of the shadows of death, that is, the shadow of the death of his high ideals. A valley in that it is a depression between 2 heights. And just as surely as he has descended from one height into the valley, so must he, if he persevere, climb the height beyond. But if he insists on walking up and down the valley, for lack of courage to essay the height ahead, the shadow will descend and enwrap him. Beware, disciple, of that lethal shade. No light that shines from spirit can dispel the darkness of the nether soul, unless all selfish thought has fled therefrom. It is the shadow of thyself outside the path, cast in the darkness of thy sins. The rod and staff are given to every disciple, not only to lean upon, but also as an alpenstock with which to climb the mountain of attainment. There is an old injunction often used in a spirit of impatience and anger, or flippantly alluded to as the 11th Commandment, yet which contains a deep occult significance. That is, mind your own business. The 10 Commandments given to Moses seem to cover all phases of mortal life, so that he who keeps the Decalogue does his whole duty to God and man. Yet while the 10 in the decimal system is accepted as perfection in the worldly affairs, the duodecimal, 12, is a system often used in the computation of occult periods. Hence, the seeker who is striving to live above mere worldly affairs, who is striving to shape his life in accord with the deeper mysteries of existence, has need of 2 more commandments to make up his duodecalogue. Whereas the 10 Commandments were delivered on Mount Sinai amidst thundering and lightning, the 11th and 12th Commandments are given by the still small voice that speaks in the silence. The 11th Commandment may sound irreverent, but in its occult significance it is far from being so. For if obeyed, it covers the period of depression referred to above. The significance of the 12th Commandment can only be grasped when the 11th has become a part of your life. Each one of you who chooses, after due deliberation and meditation, to set for yourself a divine standard of life, has entered upon a new business, one which vitally concerns yourself. At the very outset of this new business, you must meet yourself face to face, take account of stock, and find out what your real business is. To mind your own business does not mean merely negatively to refrain from interfering with the business of others, although that is included. The deeper meaning is to find out what your own business is, then actively to be about it. This applies particularly to you who have determined to live the higher life, you who have passed through the ecstasy of the awakening and are now passing through the natural reaction, the slough of despond, the valley of the shadow of death. The reason for the depression is that the moment you say to your higher self that you will henceforth live in accord with the will of that self working through you, you find yourself face to face with your old personality. This personality is composite, the aggregate of the factors and forces of the age in which you live. That is, it is made up of all elements from all the lower kingdoms, mineral, vegetable, animal, as well as the mental traits and tendencies that are the karma, not only of the soul, but also of the age, the race, the nation, the community, and the family in which you live, all of which are literally built into your physical, astral, desire, and mental bodies, a microcosm in very truth. Because this personality and its traits are not altogether your own, but are taken from the various kingdoms and other sources, the instant you determine to break away from the bonds of the flesh and express your real self, you take all these varied factors out of their customary vibration and impose upon them the will of the higher being, your true self. The new keynote is resisted by all the elements in the personality as well as in the environment, and the combined opposition of all is focused upon you. There is aroused within you every sleeping tendencies which heretofore you did not recognize nor even suspect. Many of these are but the reflex effects of the thought currents of the community. Others are tendencies stimulated by the influence of the zodiacal sign in which you were born, acting in a negative way. Also the negative aspect of your planetary influences, all acting upon the atoms of your personality through your subconscious mind, uncontrolled by the human consciousness, to say nothing of inspiration from the superconscious mind. You find yourself in the condition St. Paul speaks of. I find then a law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me. And the more determined you are to do the will of the divine self, the more unsuspected tendencies you find within you to transmute, tendencies which were quiescent or sleeping as long as you advance passively with the current of the community, but which are now awakened and fighting for life. Do not confuse the subconscious with the superconscious mind, as is so commonly done. The subconscious is the animal mind, that which is below the threshold of human waking consciousness, as sub means under or below. It is the sum total of the consciousness of all the cells, organs, ganglia, and centers of consciousness in the animal body synthesized by the animal soul. It controls all the vegetative functions such as respiration, circulation, digestion, reflex action, etc. It is also this mind that automatically reproduces that which is impressed upon it by human consciousness, such as a harmonious or inharmonious attitude toward life, ideas of health or disease, weakness or power, etc. Hence it can be called upon to adjust only such conditions as come within its domain, for it is but the servant of man's human consciousness, just as man's human consciousness should be the servant of the higher or superconsciousness. The superconscious mind is the intelligence of the real self overshadowing its human personality. It is man's touch with the divine. To come into touch with the higher consciousness, the activities of the human consciousness must be stilled, for when the mind is controlled, it becomes like a mirror to reflect and record that which comes to it from the higher self. It is the awakening into activity of these unrecognized forces that makes the darkness of the night period so depressing and awful. Each soul must face this darkness alone. Your attention is called as because scarce one passes through without bitter complaint. Your teacher or your predecessor may hold your hand in this and give you the utmost sympathy the human heart is capable of. But when the silence and the darkness come, you lose all knowledge of him. You are alone and he cannot help you, not because his power is gone, but because you have invoked your great enemy. By your great enemy, I mean yourself. If you have the power to face your own soul in the darkness and silence, you will have conquered the physical or animal self which dwells in sensation only. When the light of the Christ has illumined your heart and has awakened a recognition of your divine possibilities, it must also awaken all the latent propensities in your composite personality. For the same sun which causes the good seed to sprout in the garden of your heart will also stimulate in even greater profusion the growth of the weeds which, unless ruthlessly uprooted, will choke out the life of the good seed. The business, then, that you must mind is to pull up the weeds or conquer the foes within one by one as they appear. Make no compromise. You must conquer or be overcome. For the very recognition of your divine birthright lashes into fury all those forces of the lower self which have held you in bondage for so long. However, while this step brings out every latent fault, it also awakens every latent power for good. In fact, you never know what you really are until the light of the Christ has illumined every corner of your being. Oftentimes, the unexpected beauty and strength revealed is quite as overwhelming as the shortcoming. The battle is not one-sided. In fact, he that is with you, your higher self, is greater than he, the personality or lower self, that is against you. When you find this state of depression and lethargy approaching, instead of trying to mind the business of another, understand that it is never another's business you are to mind, nor outside conditions you are to fight, but the very forces within that are bringing the doubt upon you. The first temptation, when confronted by this apparent disillusionment, is to pick flaws, first in the teachings which have so greatly helped heretofore, then in the personality of others, hoping thereby to excuse your own shortcoming. But you can never find truth or happiness by dissecting it, only by turning your attention to yourself and finding out why you now doubt and criticize that which brought you so much happiness and satisfaction at first. Then set to work to conquer with a full realization that every one of the awakened forces of the lower self are fighting to overcome the manifestation of the real self and make you sink back once more into the passive condition into which you were but one of the many, your life but the result of the ebb and flow of the thought currents common to your family and environment, a creature ruled by circumstance and a slave to outward conditions. You never have to fight another's battles, only your own. Because your personality is made up of atoms from the entire community and environment in which you dwell, as you overcome your own faults by creating their opposites, you add strength to the power that is striving to conquer the same faults in the whole community. Moreover, you cannot thus think back without lending your forces to swell the tide that will overwhelm you and all who are near and dear to you. Every time you remind another's business or ways forth striving for the enemies outside yourself, you are adding strength to the things you would conquer. The Christ, speaking through the Master Jesus, has said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." The Christ power is the creative power of divine love that has brought you up out of the darkness and set your feet upon a rock that has literally gone before you to prepare your path. The place the Christ is preparing for you is not some post-mortem heaven inhabited by beings suddenly perfected through the experience called death, but is the place, condition, and personality you are now in. If you have been called by the Christ to face these particular conditions, rest assured that the Christ has gone before to prepare the place for you. But while the mansion or dwelling place is chosen and prepared by the Christ within, still it is you who must furnish and equip and dwell in it. This is the business which you must mind. All worldly dwelling places must be shared by all the elements of confusions which go to make up the personality, a confused and imperfect reflection of the real self. Your real mansion is prepared for you by the Christ, but ere you can dwell in it, the Christ must come in your heart and life and receive you unto himself. The first step must be to drive out the aliens who are now dwelling in your mansion, since the great aim of physical existence is not personal salvation, but the redemption or spiritualization of physical matter, and the ultimate evolution of all humanity from its lower and merely human state of consciousness to oneness with the Christ consciousness. Each individual soul finds itself confronted with a certain amount of matter from the various kingdoms, which it is its business to spiritualize and redeem. A certain personality with particular traits, tendencies, passions, and desires, out of which, as raw material, the soul must fashion the furnishings of its mansion in the Father's house. How is this to be accomplished? Here you are concerned with the little physical inequalities and disquietudes of life, and you ask over and over again, if the Christ has called me to this higher life, why do not conditions immediately change? Why is there anything for me to do but to open my heart and receive the blessings promised by my Father? One reason is that if your Father in heaven gave you all the conditions you now deem so necessary, wealth to use for good, leisure to study, opportunity to teach, etc., you would either find that when obtained they did not satisfy your soul hunger, or that you would sit down exactly as you are today, with all your faults and deficiencies nicely covered over, and would never recognize them, grow or advance, and be about your Father's business, the redemption of the world. Hence you must mind your own business, must empty, cleanse, purify, and refurnish your mansion or the temple of the living God. that where I am ye may be also. In other words, to so prepare your mansion that the Father shall dwell with you, and the Christ shall be the light thereof. Why then waste time and force striving for the things of the outer world? Why fret and fume over the little difficulties you meet in preparing your mansion? Why weep and ask for this or that thing? Why not just rest in the thoughts that the Christ has prepared this place for you, and that you must be about your business? That is, using the materials found in your personality environment to furnish a dwelling place for Him when He returns to take you unto Himself. For your Father's business is the redemption of the world, and each apparently separated individuality has a special part of that business to perform. Each of you have your own problems, and each problem brings you up against your own lower self and forces you to recognize just what it is that keeps your mansion in an unfinished state. Like Hamlet, so many feel that the time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. If you study Hamlet, you will find that in his attempt to set the world aright, he only brought sorrow and suffering to himself and those he loved, and sacrificed not only his own personality, but the personality of others in his misguided attempt. No person has ever been born to set the world aright, except so much of it as he finds expressed in his own personality. If you mind your own business and let the faults of others go, trusting to the law to straighten them out, and confine yourself to straightening out your own faults, you will realize the joy that comes from such conquering. When you cease to worry over the faults of others, it will be like a physical burden rolling from your shoulders. If you have never done this, try it merely as a physical experience for your own happiness, and the results will prove its truth. The world can never be redeemed by preaching, talking, or even by ministering to the sorrows of others, relieving their distress, building model tenements or libraries, or by changing economic conditions. While all these things are necessary factors, they are only really helpful as they are the result of true minding of the business of the Father, recognizing the absolute oneness of all, not only in a metaphysical sense, but also in the personality and the elements composing it. When mankind realizes this, universal brotherhood will be an accomplished fact. You will then realize in a practical way that everything you do or for another will react upon yourself. Then the injunction, do unto others as you would they should do unto you, will become the law of life. For you will realize that as you do unto others, you literally do unto yourself. That you must share the sorrow and joy, the privation or honors of even your most distant brothers and sisters. This will not be fighting another's battle or minding another's business, except as your own conquering helps all. It is as though a great building were being erected, in which each worker, by strictly minding his own business, which is his part of the great plan, whether he be bricklayer or architect, is making the work of all easier and advancing the completion of the entire structure. Each must share the result of the success or failure of anyone to mind his own business. These results can be attained only by elevating to a higher rate of vibration first the thought forces, and then the physical conditions of the self, the family, the community. This must be accomplished according to the natural law of harmony. If you were in a congregation which was singing out of tune, the best way to bring about harmony would not be to stop the singing and talk about it, but to sing steadily and firmly in perfect tune yourself. Those next to you would catch and spread the harmony until all were singing in tune. It will be only the working out of this law of harmony that will ultimately redeem the round world and all that dwell therein. Only the manifestation of the Christ in your heart and life can bring peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Any line of conduct that really brings peace and goodwill is therefore an expression of the Christ or divine harmony.